Здравейте, драги зрители! With the growing chill of winter, and from a recently developed fascination with them, I was interested in learning more about the coldest, at least physically, beings of the Warhammer 40k setting, the necrons. An endeavor, I was informed by a reliable source, would be best started with the book The Infinite and the Divine, as it offers a glimpse into Necron society, but more importantly, it provides a great insight into two of the faction's most infamous characters, Trazen the Infinite and orikanthediviner. I am certain that the former of the pair needs no introduction. Known as an eccentric collector of all things worthy to be remembered, and many that could technically be dismissed, independent from the greater internal struggle currently taking place within the faction, and a surprisingly chatty chap. Though, with all of the jokes aside, when trying to recall all of his appearances that I knew of in the lore, I realized that in my perception he was mainly an enigma that could charitably be summarized with the words fancy alien weirdo, rather than something more concrete. Then there was the matter of his bookmate. Namely, before learning of this story, I didn't even know something called orikanthediviner existed in the setting. So it seemed to be an excellent opportunity to expand my knowledge by both clearing up the reality of one character I knew, and introducing me to a fresh one, the image of which I hadn't muddied by exposing myself to spoilers of his existence twisted for comedic purpose. It ended up being a well-worth-it endeavor, the results of which I'd like to share with you. Unlike the previous book review, this one will be more reserved when it comes to spoilers, at least during the summary segment. I'll be touching on more specific moments and details in the review proper, so consider this your advanced spoiler warning if you first wish to read the book. Really quick before we proceed, I would really appreciate it if you disintegrated the like button and subscribe for future videos. You'd have my eternal gratitude for your support. But now, let's get on with the... Its beginning takes us back nearly 10,000 years before the ordained awakening of the Necron race, following the perspective of Trazen the Infinite, acting Pharaon of the Nihilak dynasty and overlord of their crown world of Solemnis, who had prematurely awoken and styled himself an archivist, satisfying his love of preserving the past by building a collection of artifacts, specimens, and moments from across the ages in a grand collection intended to be a museum for the Necron race to enjoy once they all awake. And in said opening, we find him engaging in active archaeology, more commonly known as theft, upon an exodite world known to the Necrons as Sephrys, or Sephril, as named by its current occupants. Upon claiming the artifact he had sought, along with a squad of exodites and their Saurian mounts, he hastily returned to his galleries on Solemnis. To his immense displeasure, said homecoming would be interrupted by the book's other major protagonist, orikanthediviner, Kreptek of the Sotek dynasty, master chronomancer, and a rival of Trazen's from back in their race's time of flesh. While the archivist gallivanted among their people's ancient enemy, the astromancer had spent 3 solar years reliving the last 20 minutes of attempting to breach a specific exhibit without triggering the galleries' numberless alarms and failsafes by resetting time after each failure. He would not succeed before the opulent display's owner returned and confronted him, learning that the diviner was after a specific artifact, the Astrarium Mysterios. As far as Trazen knew, the item in his possession was a mere replica, but Orikan's dedication to obtaining it dispelled said thoughts with the certitude that it was the genuine article. A map leading to an unimaginably important treasure, the Tomb of Nefereth, Pharaon of the Amunos dynasty and the last truly living Necrontyr, untouched by the plague that had reduced the vitality and longevity of their species, who rebelled against the Catan and them forcing biotransference upon their race. Despite being evenly matched, Orikan would come out the victor of their duel and claim the Mysterios, putting Trazen off balance by uncaringly destroying multiple ordinary but irreplaceable Necrontyr artifacts from the display they fought in. Royally incensed, the overlord of Solemnis would not let the matter go. Because he was not able to invade the Sotek capital of Mandragora, he instead took his rival to court before the Awakened Council, a body of high-standing Necrons awakened in advance of their race's bulk, tasked with keeping the peace and resolving disputes between the dynasties until they had awakened. Through the use of his chronomancy, Orikan was able to sway the judgment in his favor, narrowly avoiding several death sentences. From then on would begin a veritable game of cat and mouse between the two, spanning millennia of them trying to both reclaim the Astrarium Mysterios from the other, while also unlocking its secrets. The staged strands of fate would seemingly continue to favor the diviner, as he had begun unraveling the encrypted enigma that was the artifact, dubbing himself the equal of Vishani, a genius cryptech of the Amunos dynasty and supposedly greatest occult encoder of their race, who had apparently been the one to hide Neferef's tomb in the first place. In truth, Trazen had opted to prove himself the more cunning of the two, as he essentially waited for his rival to unlock the Astrarium's secrets before swiping it from his grasp. Over the course of their blood feud, they would discover that the Amunos' homeworld, which housed their Pharaon's entombed body, was in fact Cephris, later Seraphil, and now Serenade, named by the human settlers that had nestled on it in the millennia after the Eldar had abandoned it, due to the dastardly metal pair nearly destroying it in their fights with one another. Momentarily, in comparison to the centuries that had passed, Trazen seemingly lost interest in the tomb or the artifact. But he would unite forces with Orikan in order to save the planet from an Orcish invasion, during which time they came upon the opened entry to the tomb, but failed to cross the finish line as their mutual interference kept them from it until it closed. By then, the Awakened Council, having found out about the Chronomancers tampering with the timeline, bound their fates together and tasked them with uncovering the entrance once again, under penalty of true death. Neither liked the idea of working together with their hated rival, but grudgingly they complied, returning to work upon Serenade when they had no dynastic matters to attend to, among which the Archivist counted his assistance during Cadia's fall. For decades they would live invisibly among the burgeoning human civilization, trying to find means to reopen the gateway before a foreseen exterminatus was delivered upon the planet. Both regrettably and amusingly, said portents would come to pass due to Trazen's meddling getting the world infested by gene stealers. In the chaos of the calamity, Orikan would be buried beneath tons of earth deep under the surface, making his rival believe himself the victor, finally rid of the time-hopping pest. To his chagrin, the diviner had not only survived, but managed to dig his way to the newly opened entrance to Neferef's tomb, having spent 2,122 years of time-hopping to do so. During that time, he had also conversed with the data spirit of Vishani's personality, embedded by her in the Astrarium Mysterios, and she had desperately warned them to not open the Pharaon's tomb. A warning the Infinite would disregard, despite the pleading of his diminished and humiliated colleague. What they found inside was an old familiar horror that put both of their skills to the test. Eventually they would overcome it with mutual effort, seemingly forging an unbreakable bond of respect, if not friendship. Unfortunately, it would not last, due to Trazen's own little secrets surfacing to Orikan's attention, ending the story with one final heist upon the galleries and a declaration of enmity by the Chronomancer against his colleague. When it comes to its writing, there are no real complaints I can point to in The Infinite and the Divine. There was no sensation of its first half being exceptionally expansive, while the latter feeling rushed, like in A Thousand Suns. It is a, by and large, consistent flow of the story. However, as another more unfortunate deviation from the tome presenting the fall of the 15th Legion, I can't say that its ending was as impressive. Frankly, it should have been, since its revelation, technically speaking, was significantly more dangerous, namely that, instead of the body of the last living Necrontyr, unblemished by the poisonous touch of their homeworld, from which new bodies of flesh could be crafted for the Necron to inhabit, the tomb of Nefereth was in fact the prison for a Catan shard of the Deceiver. But after the initial shock of the reveal, the scene mellows out into, how to describe it, flashy mediocrity. I don't know if it is due to the knowledge of the sun's fall, but the battle that takes place in the tomb failed to put me on edge like the burning of Prospero did. Thinking about it, I guess the reason for it is that the only real characters in that whole scene were just Trazen and Orikan. Yes, it basically features a condensed battle of 5 armies, but none of their ranks, including the Exodite Farseer that got the most screen time out of all of them, felt like actual individuals. A better approximation for them would be RTS units that you just throw into the meat grinder that is your opponent, without really thinking about them as their own persons, even when directly controlled. while the Deceiver's Shard, which is mentioned to be a large one, likely composed of 5 or 6 actual shards, felt simply like a plot device rather than an actual person. All the while, I could not at all pick up the sensation that either Trazen or Orikan were genuinely in danger during it. Ironically, the book's biggest fault, in this rat's opinion, is that it focused so much on its cover-bound characters that it leaves no time for any others to be properly developed. Don't get me wrong, there are other named characters found in its pages which get fairly quick setups that provide pretty decent moments to indulge in, but it is only moments. Overall, the reading experience leaves you starved for variety in the persons explored in any significant depth. Conversely, however, the characterization it does of the two old cooks is stellar. Out of the pair, Orikan came off as the more unappealing character to me, but that is because I align more with Trazen's sentiment of preserving the past. And from that angle, the multiple times where the Diviner wrought destruction on the Archivist's collection, while being both the aggressor and a snarky cunt, really ticked me off. Which in turn made it all the more enjoyable when his rival got the better of him. Especially the moment where Orikan had infiltrated the Solemni's galleries in his energy form and got clapped via some Space Wolf plot weaponry. But, as the book developed, I have to admit, he did win some sympathy from me, as he was the only one that had warned the Necrontier race against taking the Catan's offer of immortality, and particularly when revealed that he was dragged into the biotransference furnace by none other than the already converted Trazen. This revelation's painful sting was further enhanced by the previously highlighted belief of the Infinite that he was the one dragged out of his library and to the doom of his flesh, resulting from his mental engrams having degraded during his long sleep, when in truth those were Orikan's memories. Also relating to him, while her introduction was rather uncomfortably sudden, I grew to find Vishani's ghost in the machine appearing in the Chronomancer's mind to be rather funny. A sentiment enhanced by her physical appearance being described to be the same as that of the quote-unquote human Zagara skin from Heroes of the Storm, except the human bits being a mono-eyed robot. Because I came to the realization that her presence was basically Orikan having his own holographic lobster waifu that only he could talk to and who would feed his ego. So, despite being a colossal prick, his point of view was fairly entertaining. I just wish a better description was given about how his energy form worked, because I didn't fully understand the one in the book. Apparently all of the cryptex can manifest it, but his was special for some reason, since it allowed him to go toe-to-toe with the Catan shard and drain its power. If any of you managed to glean it in a clearer way, please do share it in the comments. Now, when it comes to a satisfactorily described power, I must turn your attention to the higher-ranking necrons that retain the majority of their minds, being able to manipulate the necrodermis that makes up their ghastly forms in order to reshape their bodies. Prime example of which is Trazen, who would change his hands into weapons and remake the bodies of other necrons he would transfer his mind into to take on his own body's form. With the context of the earlier preamble, I don't think you'd be surprised when I say that he stole the show for me. His kleptomaniac magpie fascination with random things he encounters over the course of the story was very charming, and the way he regarded the various other races mentioned in the book with appreciation for their different ways of living compared to his colleagues' dismissive lack of care made him feel extremely endearing. Then, on top of that, you add the devious schemes through which he would outsmart Orikan, which were absolutely hilarious, such as the Catachan Safari at Home, or the high-octane Grand Theft Auto Terminators and Dinosaurs edition. But personally to me, I found the Overlord of the Nihilak to be very relatable in his aspiration to preserve history and subsequent wrath at having an uncaring vandal destroy his work. Particularly his two displays of utter spite, having the Chronomancer's head sniped by a death mark after he had given up on the Astrarium Mysterios, even though he knew this would not kill his rival, just because he wanted to do it. And then pummeling the Diviner's broken form almost to death as he went to open Nefereth's tomb. They brought me great satisfaction. Unfortunately, mirroring my thoughts on Orikan, while I adored Trazen throughout the book, right at its end he revealed something that injected me with a huge dose of "you absolute moron" in regards to my opinion on him. But I will omit said reveal for you to find out when you go through the book yourselves. What I am delighted to share, however, has to be my most favorite sequence from the entire story. Namely, the two cranky bastards working together to save Serenade from an orcish invasion. Due to leading his forces on the ground, Trazen and his Lich Guard were mistaken by the human populace as the Silver Skulls chapter, having come to save the loyal subjects of the throne from the alien invaders. This deception was likely propagated by the Inquisition, who had figured out what actually happened on that day. Still, the locals erected a statue in their savior's honor, treating it like a monument of worship. A detail Trazen smugly held over his colleague's head. The absolute best part of the event itself had to be the brief exchange between our two protagonists before one deployed to the surface, when the other noticed orc boarding torpedoes being fired at his personal vessel. "Trazen, our ships are without atmosphere, unpressurized," Orikan said. "Do orcs breathe?" A pause. "They have lungs." Yeah, they have lungs, but what they have even more of is guts. Because to the Diviner's chagrin, they were able to breach his cruiser without being swept away by the lack of atmosphere, and instead rampaged through it until they were cut down by the defending troops. The Infinite and the Divine is a book I am happy to give my seal of recommendation to. It's not a heavy read and sparse on big grand moments that hit you hard, but from cover to cover it maintains an important standard: satisfaction. Consistently engaging with a near-perfect blend of personal drama and comedy between its titular duo. Despite the conservative amount of grandiose happenings, the plot beats, characters, and moments varying from intimate to explosive form a tapestry that is sure to keep your attention on itself. If not on the edge of your seat, then most definitely with a smile on your face and a chuckle in your throat. Oh, and while it may not happen for you, I caught myself audibly saying "bastard" out of delight for what was taking place in the story on multiple occasions, so I feel I should recommend being mindful of it. If you read, or have already read the book for yourself, what do you think of it? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the review and wish you a lovely rest of your day. Do viždene.